So you want to know how someone with no science background can get accepted into university to study any one of the science degrees. These are my top 10 things you should do in order to succeed in getting accepted. Alright, so let's talk about the first thing you should do. Number 1, prepare mentally for the long haul. If you are a so-called proper adult who wants to change careers, who is looking to pursue their first college degree, who is holding down a job, who has children or other dependents, who has a mortgage or credit card debts or other types of debts, it might take a very long time for you to prepare. Things will be more complicated, but don't be afraid and don't be discouraged by your financial situation or your age. Time will pass anyway, so if you need to, do get a mentor or watch motivational videos, for example. Look at things like your diet so that you can cut out anything that might be affecting your mood, your energy, your sleep. Number 2, believe in yourself and stop asking other people what you should do. And I am making this a separate tip because it can be a deal breaker. Make sure that you start or stay on a course of positivity and you cut out all negativity around you. You will need a clear mind and a bunch of inner pump to stay the course. There will be trying times and challenges and naysayers and even haters within your own circle of friends and family, but stick with it. Number 3, if you don't already have one, make a plan. Now, this might sound like a pretty obvious thing to do, but you'd be surprised how many people just talk about wanting to do something, but they don't write down a plan with a timeline, with actionable steps, and simply don't take any action. But there's no shame in the game. I've been guilty of the same thing too. So write down a status plan of where you are in life right now. And this goes for anyone in any situation at any point in their lives at any age. Get your life in order before you start thinking what you need to do to prepare academically. For countries where you have to pay for your education, you'll need to start figuring out how you're going to manage, how you're going to pay for your studies and your existing expenses. So some of the tips that I'm giving today might not necessarily be for those people who are not financially challenged. However, you will need to figure out what time of the day, for example, you allocate for studying. If you have a 9-to-5, so-called 9-to-5 job, are you going to study after in the evenings? Are those classes available? Are you going to decide to leave the corporate world or leave the factory job or leave the shop where you're working at and register as a freelancer, which of course has its challenges in itself? You will need to make a budget as well. Figure out what your net worth is. What is your income versus what are your fixed monthly expenses? What are your miscellaneous expenses? What other expenses are going to come into play when you do change that career? And really, when you do that exercise, you'll figure out and you'll see in black and white what kind of changes you need to do to your life and start acting accordingly. You're going to have to be creative and you're going to have to start cutting all those things that are really taking a big chunk of your budget. Start canceling frivolous and unnecessary things like, not to mention them, but Netflix, for example. Start trying to figure out what else you can watch online and will you have time even to watch anything. Obviously, it's always good to have that moment or that space where you take a break, but you have to also understand that if you're going to have to work and study at the same time, there's going to be a lot of sacrifices that need to be made, and that includes your time is now going to be allocated to studying and working and resting and taking a break instead of spending time doing things that are not really bringing anything adding to your life in a positive way or just that are not really meaningful. That exercise will give you a really good idea of the timeline in your life. It might be months, it might be years. In my case, I took a lot of years because I had a young child, and no matter how much I try to do, you can't really do it all. You can do it all but not be good at all of them at the same time. And I realized that. So if you're working full time and you want to be a good parent, there aren't enough hours in the day for you to do that. And it could be other things that your time is taken up with, not just children. There are people who don't have that kind of commitment, but in any case, their time is taken up in other things. Number 4, make a list of the universities you would want to attend and that are offering that degree that you want to study. In my case, that was astrophysics. And I will talk about the difference between astronomy and astrophysics in another video. But whatever you want to study, you have to look and make a list of the universities that do offer it. And you have to look at things in what country are they offering it, what kind of tuition are they asking for, do they have scholarships, do you speak the language of that country where you want to go study? Because nowadays you can't just really think regionally necessarily. You might just want to go abroad, and that implicates a lot of different things that you would need to do in order for you to pursue that kind of avenue. You might have an idea of what your preferred college is, or you might not. What you don't want to do is box yourself into just one place, just one city, just one type of university. You want to make it as broad as possible and have different choices so that you are not later on disappointed, perhaps, if you don't get in your preferred college or university. And I will make another video just going through some of the major universities that do offer STEM degrees. And while doing that exercise, you'll also find out that some universities, for example, do not take second degree students, or they do not take mature students. Some of them tell you right up front that they don't want to take the so-called mature students. And they phrase it in a way that they say, we don't accept second degree students. Therefore, the pool of universities available to you might shrink significantly, and that's something to take into account. You'll want to jot down all the deadlines, the registration deadlines. You want to know the entrance exam deadlines, those that require the SATs, even though a lot of universities have stopped accepting those or requiring those. For the science degrees, they do require it if you don't have previous studies in science, or you don't have the required math or maths, as they say in some other places, or you don't have the required chemistry preparatory courses or physics or things like that. But you will need to really go down to the nitty-gritty of the requirements and what you need to do. And so that is an exercise that is absolutely imperative to have done. Number 5, look at the general entrance or application requirements and the degree requirements. All STEM degrees, and that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, require math. And depending on what you might want to study, it might be, for example, chemistry, or it might be physics. But there is and there won't be any way to go around that requirement. If you do not have that level of understanding, or you have deficiency in your educational background of any sort, and because of any reason, you'll need to start brushing up or looking into prepping yourself in order for you to attain the level that you will be required, at least for the entrance examinations and for you to get into whatever college you're trying to get into. But don't worry and don't be put off by the idea of learning math. I am still learning and feel inadequate most of the time in that area, but I keep pushing through and plowing through and just relearning and repeating and just trying as hard as I can to be able to get to the level that I need to get to for every course that I take. And probably, everybody shares that little fear when you don't have a solid background, or you feel that you're not brilliant enough in that area, or you don't know enough. But just keep at it. You do have to love it, or love the process, because you will need it. So you wouldn't otherwise be in science if you didn't like math. I think a lot of the times when we are little, we just don't have the right teacher or the right educator, or a system that is deficient in many ways, or a background at home that it's not conducive to learning math. And so whatever the reasons are, just know that practice makes perfect. And if you keep on learning and studying and going through all the motions and doing exercises, you will get there someday, somehow. But you have to put in the work. Math is sequential, so it's like a ladder, and you have to learn every step of the way. You cannot just jump from the bottom of the ladder into the top of the ladder without having to put in the work, as I said. So don't be afraid though. You just have to do it, and you just get on with it, as we do. Having said that, my number 6 tip is to enroll yourself in the necessary prep courses. Story time. In my case, I enrolled in 2 different courses. I have been for years looking into which university I was going to go to. I had an idea where I wanted to go, which I ended up going to, and that's where I'm going to now. And that is the first of everywhere where I apply. That is the first acceptance letter that I got. So, manifestation does exist, but you have to put in the work, as always. I had a course that was Tuesdays and Thursdays, starting at 5:45 and ended at 9 o'clock at night. That was Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I ran from work, probably changed 3 different tubes, or metro, as they call it, their tubes. Went back home, got home at probably 10 o'clock, and I did that for a year. And then I had another course on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So I had to take my lunch there. So that was a whole year of preparation, because I knew I had to refresh and attain a certain level of math for me to at least apply for the universities that I was looking for and that I wanted to get into. Because obviously different universities have different criteria and they have different levels, but the basic level of math you will need to have. So if your level is very basic, enroll in night school, enroll in adult learning institutes, go private if you can. Take weekend courses, as I did. There are institutions like in the UK, or I'm not sure in the US, but I was in the UK at the time. They are subsidized by the government, so you pay a minimum fee. I pay about £50, and if you pass the test, then you get it back at the end. So I went to 2 different institutions because I wanted to have the same type of math, enough of it that I could then use it to gain entrance or pass the test that I needed to take for the universities that I was applying to. And even then, when you do try to attend this kind of adult learning centers, they do have themselves their own entrance exams to see what level of math you have, so that they can, it's called a placement test, and it really is to see where they can place you for you to learn in math, what class will be most beneficial to you. I had no issues with one of the classes to get into it. I passed the test really well. I found it to be kind of easy, and the same level was then I was in another institute or adult learning institute, what they call it, and I think the entrance was 42 points out of 50, and I only had 41, and I took the exam twice and I got 41 twice. And then I waited for the right person. I waited for the decision maker to be in the office. I asked who they were, and then I showed up and I kind of begged them to let me into the course, because it was only one point missing. So I think when you really want something and people see that you are really eager and you really want to learn, they will make concessions for you. They will help you. They won't pave, the easiest of ways for you, but they will help you if you're missing just one little point, like I was. For chemistry and physics, you will need to study the very basic concepts. So that's something that you might look into it. For astrophysics and astronomy, at least for astrophysics, to get into that degree, I had to take an entrance exam of basic chemistry. And it's not too difficult, but you do have to study for it. And if I didn't make it clear before, most of the schools have these type of entrance exams as part of your application process. So you really have to find out what you need to study, practice a lot, and see what the deadlines are so that you make sure that you register and that you make your applications on time. In my experience, all of the schools will treat you as a recent high school graduate, no matter your age and no matter what kind of degrees you have. As long as they are not science, they are unlikely to help you in getting in to study any STEM degree. Your previous degrees will help, however, in the core courses or the general courses that you usually have to take with every degree. But that is once you have been accepted, not before and during the application process. I do recommend that you do loads of practice exams online. You will realize that you will learn how to take the exams, meaning answering questions faster, figuring out the exams patterns, the questions patterns, timing yourself, controlling your nervousness, learning what questions to start with on the exam, and much more. Number 7, make a list of people that can write recommendations for you. Start contacting old school teachers or old university teachers or your new adult learning center teachers. Most of the people that they require for you to have letters of recommendations from will be teachers and professors, and very few, but there will be a few that are character-based recommendations. So you will want to have somebody that is perhaps an ex-boss or a colleague that can write a character recommendation for you as part of your application process. Work on creating a CV or a resume to serve as a guide for the recommender or the teacher that will need to write those letters for you. Keep in mind that these teachers might not remember you, and even when they do remember you, they might not be up to date with what you have been doing, and they will need some sort of guidelines to help them write that recommendation letter for you. Short of writing the letter yourself, what you can do is write a lot of bullet points, pointing out your strengths. Never highlight your weaknesses, in my opinion. They do have especially a lot of the American application forms, they always have that kind of tear-jerking requirement type of thing. Can you tell us about a time that was really awful and then you overcame? That's not necessarily a part of everyone's life. And even if you did have it, in my opinion, it's not something that I really would want to talk about to a complete strangers. That's not what my academic future should be based on, even if it's a small part. Well, anyway, that's my opinion, but just be ready for that. Look for essays online for inspiration. There are a lot of them available out there. Not all of them will be suitable to what you need to write about yourself, but then it will give you tips on different phrases that you can use. A lot of these recommendations also, or statements, personal statements, they will require 200 words, 500 words, and then if you are not prepared, what happens is that you will really get tired. And these essays might have and usually have a lot of different themes in common. So I do recommend that you keep a log of what you have written, what you have said, to whom and when, so that you can mix and match some of those sentences and some of the things that you have said, because after all, you're talking about yourself, you're talking about your background, you're talking about the things that you aspire to do and to be, and things that you have done and things that inspire you. They are going to be all the same, so you can rephrase it in a different way. But it's really crucial for you to be prepared during this stage, because you will need it for most of the universities. Number 8, gather all your transcripts. And I mean your high school transcripts. Even if it's been 30 years, they will still ask for them. Believe me, you. Number 9, do look for scholarships. Start with the school that you are applying for. If you are from the same state, the same province, the same country, there might be, and there's usually more scholarships available to you, stipends, different things based on academic merit, based on musical talent, based on gender, on race. There's absolutely all kinds of scholarships, and people just don't find them and don't do enough work looking for them. I do know that once you find them, it could be really trying and really taxing for you to fill out all the things that they require. Sometimes they just seem, it might seem ridiculous to you and redundant, because they're asking things that, you know, they're kind of obvious, but then if you look at it from their side, they're trying to give money to strangers, and they need to base it on something and make a decision based on something and in some criteria. So just keep that in mind. But don't delay your application because you're looking for scholarships. Last but not least, apply. Now that you have a list of all the universities you want to apply to, that you have a list of the core requirements and the degree requirements, and you have worked on recommendations and the people who are going to recommend you, and you have looked for your transcripts, done your prep courses for however long it was, you have your life plan, you see, you know where the money is going to come from, and you have examples of recommendations, and you worked on your CV. Now you are ready to make your applications. One thing you have to keep in mind is the amount of money that it takes to apply to all these different universities. But I do recommend that you take advantage of the common applications that many universities and many states and many countries have, where you only have to pay one fee to apply to all the universities. To mention a few that I know, you have UCAS from the UK. I'm not sure if it's for the whole of Britain, but certainly for England, you have UCAS. You have the CUNYs for the city of New York colleges. Then you have SUNY, which is the State University of New York. And then you have the individual ones, you know, the MITs, then you have, you know, the Princetons and the Harvards and different colleges that only have their own application. And then you will need to pay for that separately. Some of these schools, however, do have a waiver system, so make sure you look into whether you qualify to have the application fee waived or not. And those are my tips. I hope you found them useful, and good luck. See you next time.